Welcome to Stylized Sentences. My name is Dr. Burkett. This lesson teaches how to write long sentences that are clear, shapely, and highly readable by extending short sentences or changing relative clauses into stylish, modifying phrases. Why learn to write long sentences? According to Joseph Williams, if you can write clear and concise sentences, you have achieved much. But if you cannot write a clear sentence longer than 20 words or so, you're like a composer who can write only jingles. Despite those who advise against long sentences, you cannot communicate every complex idea in a short one. You have to know how to write a sentence that is both long and clear. This lesson shows how to write long sentences and how to extend short ones clearly and with style. Writers can write long sentences clearly and stylishly by changing long relative clauses into three kinds of modifying phrases: resumptive modifiers, summative modifiers, and free modifiers. Writers can extend sentences and create more clarity than vague relative clauses. Clarity that begins by repeating a key word, like clarity, to create a stylish, a positive or absolute phrase called a resumptive modifier. For example, Catherine Porter writes, "Most people will not recognize that writing is a craft, requiring an apprenticeship like all other crafts, a craft that gains one entry into a literate society and professional and academic discourse communities." Second example, God is a righteous judge, a God who expresses his wrath every day. Third example, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." The last example has a double resumptive modifier, repeating the key word plans twice, both times followed by a verbal infinitive. Plans to prosper you, and then plans to give you hope. In this way, the prophet Jeremiah, through his English translator, writes a long sentence that is simple in construction, clear, stylish, and thus enjoyable to read, the hopeful news. Let's create a resumptive modifier in 3 steps. First, end a main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon. Second, select a key word, a noun or a noun phrase, from the main clause. And third, start in a positive phrase with the key word plus that or a verbal. Here's an example with John Updike's sentence. "Writing and rewriting are a constant search for what it is one is saying, a search that creates meaning for both the writer and readers." And you can see how I chose a resumptive word, search, added the word that, and I'm off and running, extending my sentence. Now you try. Extend a sentence with a resumptive modifier in 3 steps. 1. End a main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon. That would only create a comma splice. 2. Select a key word, a noun or noun phrase from the main clause. 3. Start in a positive phrase with the key word plus that or a verbal. For example, we can extend the sentence by Ludwig Wittgenstein, who declares, "The borders of my language are the borders of my world." And I select a key word like borders, add the word that, and I am off to extend my sentence. Can you complete the sentence? One might try this. Borders that limit or expand one's horizons as related to one's interest in language itself. Let's look at summative modifiers. By forming summative modifiers, writers can extend sentences and create more clarity than vague relative clauses, a style that readers desire and usually expect. For example, the American Civil War marked new advances in racial justice and equity, a sign that the American ideal of equality would continue to extend to all peoples with a level of human dignity previously unknown and rarely imagined in the world. Notice how the summative modifier is longer than the main clause, yet remains clear and readable. Let's create a summative modifier in 3 steps. First, end a main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon. That would create a comma splice. Second, create a word or a phrase, usually a noun, to sum up the sentence. And third, start in a positive phrase with the key word plus that, or a verbal. Here's our example with John Updike's sentence. Writing and rewriting are a constant search for what it is one is saying. And I'm extending my sentence here, a critical occasion that leads to exciting new insights and meanings. Or if I wanted to use a verbal, I could extend it as a critical occasion leading to exciting new insights and meanings. Now you try. Create a summative modifier in 3 steps. End a main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon. Create a word or phrase, usually a noun, to sum up the sentence. And start in a positive phrase with the key word plus that, or a verbal. Let's try this sentence. Adolf Hitler proclaimed, "The broad masses of a population are more amenable to the appeal of rhetoric than to any other force." And then I create my summative term or phrase to put in after the comma in the blank, add the word that, and I'm off and running to extend my sentence. Can you complete the sentence? One might try this, a truism that one either learns rhetoric or succumbs to it. Free modifiers. By means of free modifiers, writers can extend the line of a sentence while avoiding a train of ungainly and vague relative clauses, expressing thoughts with shape, style, and clarity. For example, a quotation from the book of Acts in the New Testament. Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, since he was a chief speaker, bringing bulls and wreaths to the city gates to offer sacrifices to them. Well, the example sentence describes a strange occasion in history, but it's also a stylish long sentence. A free modifier is simply a participial phrase, but called free because a writer can place it in any appropriate part of the sentence. Since free modifiers start with participles, a writer should select a participle that modifies the sentence's subject, lest one create a dangling participle. For a participle is an adjective that modifies a noun. In addition, a participle gives the noun an action to perform. So the noun, the sentence's subject, needs to be capable of performing the action expressed in the participle. Let's create a free modifier in 3 steps. First, end a main clause with a comma, usually not a dash. Second, think of a verbal, a participle, to add action. And third, start a modifier with the participial phrase, one that modifies the grammatical subject of the sentence. So, for example, with John Updike's sentence, writing and rewriting are a constant search for what it is one is saying. I add my participle, calling, and then I extend the sentence. I'm off and running, calling writers to self-reflective consideration of language itself. Now you try. Create a modifier, a free modifier, in 3 steps. End a main clause with a comma, usually not a dash. Think of a verbal, a participle, to add action. And start a modifier with the participial phrase, one that modifies the subject. So let's see if we can extend this sentence. Most people, points out Catherine Porter, will not realize that writing is a craft and requires an apprenticeship like all other crafts. And here, after my comma, I think of a participle. Can you complete this sentence? Well, one might try this. Spending time, and there's my participle spending. So spending time learning the styles, forms, and techniques of effective and ethical communication. And you notice how spending modifies the subject of the sentence, most people. Now you know how to write stylized sentences, or write them better. Writers practice writing long, clear, stylized sentences, extending short sentences, and replacing relative clauses with resumptive, summative, and free modifiers. To write well and avoid confusion, one should form stylized sentences perfectly, a level of achievement expected of fine writers and most educated people. The point is, when you have To write a long sentence, don't just add one phrase or clause after another willy-nilly. Especially avoid tacking one relative adjective clause onto another and onto another. Instead, try extending the line of a sentence with resumptive, summative, and free modifiers. Then you'll write clear and stylish sentences, sentences that readers understand and enjoy. Keep writing, and see you next time.